Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam, and today we're cutting through the noise, all of the noise that we find inside of the headlines. And I'm gonna begin to guide you through to help you kind of find some truth that is in the news while looking at all of the data. We're gonna break it down. We're gonna take our time. We're gonna read it. We're gonna digest it, and then we're gonna assess it, and then we're gonna find the opportunity in it. So I'm gonna give you some of my observations as we go through these news articles, where I do believe that there is a lot of opportunity in every single market and every single headlines that we can implement into our real estate businesses to see success. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. And this one is going to come from thestreet.com, and it's written by Jeffrey Quiggle. And I think I've actually shared an article by him once before. I remember actually liking this article that I talked about with Jeffrey Quiggle once. So this article here, before I share my screen, this is about Zillow, and the title of this is Zillow Forecasts New 2026 Change in Housing Market Real Estate. Okay, so what they're going to be talking about here is Zillow is kind of signaling a major pivot for the 2026 housing market. They're going to be moving away more from the whole idea of what the lock-in effect is and how that's affecting the real estate market, because we have been talking about this every single week. The lock-in effect is kind of fading a little bit as we go. It's not all the way gone yet, but it is fading as time goes forward. And so just to quickly summarize, if you're a regular here, I'm sorry, you've heard me say this over and over again, but often we need to be reminded than taught. So let's just remind ourselves again what the lock-in effect is. The lock-in effect is simply put that those that had bought when the interest rate was extremely low, let's say 2.5%, 3.5%, 4% interest back in 2019 to 2023. Okay, so they bought in that interest rate. We then spiked up to 8% the following year in 23 and maybe a little bit into 24. We then began inching back down to right where we settled right around 6.1, right? We are 4 to 5 years removed from the low interest rate where people had bought really low. So what is the lock-in effect? Well, the idea behind the lock-in effect, and it's got some truth to that, is that they are locked into their loan and their mortgage because they have a low interest rate. Therefore, they do not want to sell, because if they go out and buy again, they're going to have to buy at a higher interest rate. So that is in essence the lock-in effect. Now, if we move forward in time, we understand that the years have now passed. We are now 4 or 5 years removed from that. And those that had bought 4 or 5 years ago could have a 7 or 8% interest rate. Therefore, a 6.1 interest rate actually could be beneficial. That is the low-hanging fruit for real estate agents out there to go talk to those sellers. Okay, so that is the lock-in effect. This article is moving away from the lock-in effect a little bit, not really necessarily talking about it, but addressing it a little bit like I just did, right? Now, I will say the article carries a little bit of like a crystal ball type of hype to it, but the data in it does suggest a significant unlocking of inventory that could change your listing strategy going forward into 2026. And that's where we want to kind of pay attention. Then I'm going to jump into an article, and I won't labor on this first article too much, because the second article we're going to be talking about is by Redfin, and they go into a little bit more of the data in regards to what the data is saying in the 2026 market. So I'll be blending the two articles here just a little bit. Now, it could be a little bit heavy, but here's the thing, and I've noticed this, and I understand that you might leave and log out of this live stream. You can come back and watch it later. Perfectly fine. It stays live on YouTube and Twitch and Rumble and all those places as well. You can go back and watch it. And I would encourage you to do that. If you do log out, come back and watch the data and see the numbers, because the more we digest this type of information, the better we get at navigating that typical question that we get asked as real estate agents is, how's the market? And if we can't answer that question with correct data, we can misguide our client and ultimately lead them down a road to make the wrong decision when buying or selling a property. We don't want to do that. So let's get into some of this data here. So I'm going to share my screen. Now, I've really done talking. We can get to the first article. All right, like I said, this is Jeffrey Quiggle with The Street. And it says the real estate technology company anticipates a major trend for home buyers and sellers. We're going to skim through this just really briefly and quickly. It says key points: monthly mortgage payments are, and this is a very, very good opening line. And we're going to get into, I'm going to show you a graph here in just a second. And I'm sorry, TikTok guys, I can't share my screen on there. They keep kind of red flagging me for copyright infringement. So sorry. But I will be verbalizing what it says. Key points: monthly mortgage payments are 8.4% lower than last year, signaling improved affordability. I'll show you a graph of that later. Zillow and Redfin forecast gradual housing market improvements and steady mortgage rates in 2026, and U.S. home inventory prices and sales are slowly stabilizing, but competition remains subdued. Okay, so that's kind of the key points, the key moments of what this article is going to be talking about. Let's jump into this and just break this down a little bit. How do I get rid of this little ad right here? Oh, Now it's in part of the big screen. All right. Prospective home buyers may soon have the opportunity to experience a bit of relief. Real estate technology company Zillow has a new January 2026 market report finding that the typical monthly mortgage payment is now 8.4% lower than it was a year ago. Well, again, everyone's probably like, I'm paying way more for my house and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, well, let's get into the data just a second, so bear with me. The average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage reached 6.11 on February 5th, nudging up from 6.10. We're talking marginal here, right? At this point last year, that same loan type sat at 6.89. Okay, so there is your difference, right? You go from a 6.89 down to a 6.1, and then you've got a difference in your savings of your monthly payment. Okay, and there's other factors that are at play as well to drive that payment down just a little bit. So when we start talking about, is now a good time to buy a house? Yep, it kind of is, right? Waiting is not really the smart game here. It's just not. And again, I'm going to talk about some more of that data and prove to you why waiting is really not a good idea. It's more of a risk and a gamble than actually buying now. And it says for 15-year mortgages, the average rate came in at 5.5, a slight uptick from 5.49. All right, we're going to jump down here. Zillow predicts new improvement in the housing market. Based on current trends, Zillow Group chief economist Misha Fisher offered a housing market prediction for the next few months. All right, she says was it she? I'm sorry. Misha, I'm assuming. I'm not sure. The 2026 forecast for both sales and affordability is one of gradual improvement, Fisher wrote. January was a cautious first step along that path as winter weather impacted many major markets. Look, let's not lie. I mean, if you were anywhere between Texas and all the way up to the East Coast, the winter weather has been brutal. Where I'm at, we still have ice all over the ground. Matter of fact, I went out and showed a farm with some friends, and for the first time ever, and this is wild, is we walked on the farm with our feet and did not give way and touch the grass. It was a solid sheet of ice, the whole entire farm. I mean, we were sliding like we were on an ice skating rink up and down some hills. It was such a weird moment. So that is a massive effect on the real estate market. So that's going to skew numbers just a little bit because a large swath of real estate in the kind of Texas East coast got hit so hard with winter that it has delayed a lot of what we're going to see. So that there is a little bit of skewing in the data in regards to that. It says home values and mortgage payments. The typical U.S. home is valued at $358,968 according to Zillow. It says the Zillow Home Value Index declined 0.4% from December to January, though values remain 0.2% above where they were a year ago. And it says a standard monthly mortgage payment on a typical home is $1,733, key point, with a 20% down payment, excluding taxes and insurance. Okay, so that's not counting. So if you're out there and you're listening, well, I pay way more than that. Well, just note it's a 20% down on that purchase price of the average purchase price of $358,968 with 20% down, excluding the taxes and insurance. Okay, this is an 8.4% lower than it was last year. Nationwide housing inventory reached 1.11 million homes in January. The number of active listings was 6% higher than at the same time last year, though it dipped 0.1% compared with December. Again, weather. It says home sales, an estimated 219,644 homes changed hands in January. Newly pending listings, which track properties moving from active pending status rather than completed sales, rose 1.8% year over year and increased 20.8%. And home price competition, Redfin forecast. We're going to get into Redfin's article here in just a second. All right, so that gives you just a quick snapshot about what Zillow is seeing inside of their own data. I'm not saying that they have all the data in the world, but you can kind of see what they're saying in perspective about what the market is doing. And again, what I like to do, and I call this reading across the tabs, if I'm going to do talking about numbers and data, I want to read multiple sources to see if the reports are kind of coming in the same. So we're comparing two portals' data. Okay, I'm going to be comparing Zillow, which is a big portal player in the real estate arena, and Redfin, which also keeps track of a lot of data through their network. So these are two portals that we're kind of looking into to kind of see what their data is saying and where we land. So this gives us a good idea about what's really happening in the market. And it's really good for us to start the week talking about the market. And I'll do a wrap up of this on the final live stream on Thursday of this week. And those that are watching, just know that I do a live stream Monday through Thursday, 8:30 Eastern time, right here where you're watching every single week. Okay, so just come back, and you can come back and watch this later as well as a replay. And I do go back and I add chapter markers and stamps. That way you can jump to the articles you want to listen to. And you can share that specifically to clients and stuff as well. So just know that. Now let me give just a quick summary of or kind of I'm not going to go too heavy on the action items at the end of this article, because I'm going to piggyback onto the next one. But I will say is, like, there is a lot of confusion in this market. A lot of the consumers are not sure if now is a good time to buy or not. And you probably have a lot of people in your CRM or contacts that are like kind of the wait and see homeowners. And I'll call them more of the wait and see homeowners of 24, 25, specifically 24. They are, and even 23, parts of 23, they got a higher interest rate typically. So they're kind of like, maybe they need to sell, but they're not really ready yet because they're afraid if they buy now, the market's going to do something crazy. So paying attention to this data and going back to the people you sold a house to in 23, 24, and just kind of do a life check with them and just kind of see what they're looking at would be a good thing. So I'd go back to your CRM and just kind of look through that and see if there's any options in there for a reach out and a touch. I would also kind of audit that CRM, kind of go through and just check where your wait and see homeowners are, and, kind of re-engage them or remove them and kind of clean that up. I think we need to be in our CRMs a whole lot more, because that's our business model, right? All right. So let me jump into this next one. This next one here, like I said, this is going to be by Redfin. And the title here is 2026 Housing Market Mood. All right. So they're going to be talking about the mood of it, and they're going to give some actually really good data. We're going to really more focus in on that. It says buyers are cautious, sellers are showing up, and agents see signs of busier spring ahead. Okay. So that's the overall title, which I appreciate that. It's not a hype or scare tactic headline. It's actually a really good positive one. And for that, I'm really thankful. And this is by Dana Anderson. So by Redfin News. So Redfin here is kind of tracking a shift, and they're going to be more specifically tracking a shift in the buyer sentiment as we head farther into 2026. So that's what we're going to see. It's kind of a little bit of a shift more into the buyer side of the arena. And so this headline plays on the mood of the market. But the real story is going to be in the data, and it's going to be more around the whole concept of the stabilization of prices, and more specific in certain regions. And we got to keep this in mind. And I'll just stop here and really remind you that anytime we're reading data like this, we are taking a broad picture of the country. Okay. We all know as real estate agents that this is a local type industry. So all this data we go through, let's just remember that it's not that this is not true. It's just, it might not be true specifically for your market, but it can give us an overall perspective about what the market is doing as a whole and how that might trickle down into our local markets. So we can take a bird's eye view, and then we can become very equipped in understanding our local market information. We can marry those two and come to a pretty good conclusion about the importance of understanding this data and how to correlate that and help our clients, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. All right, let's jump into this next article here. All right, it says pending homes are declining, and the homes that are selling are taking more than 2 months to find a buyer. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of a tension right here already in the market. Okay, we do understand that the pending homes have declined, and the homes that are selling are taking more time to find a buyer. So this is typical when you come into a market shift or a correction, not a crash. This is what happens when you could blame just the overall comparables on the market. So the appraisers are having a little more difficult to appraise properties, which could delay the property being sold because it's sold higher than it appraised for. It could also be contributed to the seller not understanding the market. And then I'm gonna put some pressure on the real estate agents. It also comes to the real estate agents not being fully aware about the market shift that has taken place and pricing strategies and how to price homes correctly, and not being bold enough to tell sellers how to price their homes. And those are all the factors that lead to a market doing what we see now, where you see a higher time days on the market. Okay. So again, a little bit more of a correction, not a crash, guys. All right. Homes are selling at their slowest pace in 6 years, and pending sales are down. It says the typical U.S. homes that sold in January spent 64 days on the market before going under contract. the longest span in 6 years and roughly a week longer than a year earlier. Pending home sales fell 3.3% year over year, in line with the declines we have seen over the last few months. All right, it says the bright spot of the slow market is that buyers who are out there have negotiating power. Home sellers are outnumbering buyers by a record gap. So buyers out there, if you're wanting to buy, and this is why I'm saying like waiting is not the game. Buying now is. You have way more leverage than you've had in the past 6 years. For the first time, it's shifted more to the buyer side. You have options for you. And you also have to remember this. And this is, let me just pause for just a second. This is kind of crazy. So this is, I don't mean this to be a bunny trail, but just go with me. Is I sit here and I do a live stream and I break down the news, and then we do short clips and I post them on TikTok and things like that. And inside of the short few seconds of videos, I will break down certain aspects about what the market's doing, but you don't get the full context. And what I've noticed, even inside of TikTok and Instagram Shorts and all this type of, and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, is you don't get the full context. And now I will say in some ways this is good because people begin to comment on those short videos, even though what I'm saying is not in full context. And they make statements like, well, I paid X amount and that doesn't mean true. And they kind of laugh at my statements. But what they failed to realize is that there's way more to what I'm actually saying in the context of that 30-second clip that I have posted on social media. And that's why, again, I encourage people to come back to this live stream to watch everything in detail. But I will say those comments in those shorts and TikTok videos do elaborate and help us to have conversation and gives me opportunity to kind of break down what it is I'm actually saying. So I'm going to go back and actually correct some of the comments that were going on in a certain video I post, where I posted a video talking about interest rates and how closing costs and things like that are less. And what I was specifically saying in that video was not that the closing costs themselves, and I even say in the video, the money you take to the table, all right? It doesn't mean that your closing cost, the actual dollar amount is less. The amount of money that you have to take to closing is less. Obviously, your closing cost, the total number fluctuates based on the purchase price of the home. You've got a percentage points that you got to pay. You got interest you got to pay. You got certain factors that go up as homes increase in value. The point is, though, is the amount of out of pocket, the amount of money of closing costs you have to bring to the table is less. When the market gets more competitive and there's more sellers on the market than buyers, the sellers are now more incentivized to do a couple things. One is price their home more correctly and effectively, driving the price down a little bit, or being more negotiable on their price, which saves the buyer more money. All right. Or they give more concessions. They might even do buy downs of interest rates, and they'll do concessions where they absorb your closing costs to compete against the other seller that you're thinking about buying for. So they incentivize the buyer to come to the table. So sure, it's not about a reduction in the amount of physical money, if you look at the closing statement, but it is about the amount of liquidity of your money that you have to then put on the home. There's a difference there. And then by freeing up the cash, you're able to do more with that cash to maybe even improve that house, get it ready to live in, or increase the value of that home because you're not using your liquid cash. So you can go in, negotiate with the seller, more concessions and all those type of things. You're not bringing as much closing to the table. When the seller market is really low and the buyer is really high, there's more competition, right? So sellers are more firm. They don't pay much closing costs. They're like, well, we're going to sell it anyway. We got 50 other buyers behind you. We got a pricing war. You got to make your offer look really good. So you pad it all up, and sometimes you overbid the listing price, right? So that's the point of tension. So I just wanted to pause and do a little bit of correction that, again, what I teach here is that you have to get everything in context. You have to sit down and listen to everything. It's not about this bite-sized information. That's where you can get misguided. And that's one thing I don't like about short form video. But I think if you could just apply that form of logic and reason to when you watch and swipe through and just absorb information that way, that there's probably more to the story than what you're hearing, right? It's just not enough time to completely veg out all those details. Anyway, would-be buyers are hesitant partly due to high costs. The good news, costs are slowly coming down. We just kind of broke that down. More sellers are listing their homes. Again, we talked about the lock-in effect kind of fading away as time goes forward. So more homes are kind of beginning to come on the market. Plus, there's all kinds of incentivizing going on in regards to deregulations and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all these other things that are doing likewise and putting more reducing the amount of pressure for zoning to allow more different creativity in building homes. So all of those factors come into play. that drive more sellers to the market. And there's still a buyer pool, right? So good time to buy. Let's jump into some of the leading indicators that Redfin lays out here. It says indicators of home buying demand activity. It says the daily average 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 6.2 in February 4th, up from 3-year low roughly a month ago. So it's up just a little bit. We're hovering around on the 6%. That's what we're going to see for 2026, guys. I truly believe that. But just keep this in mind, year over year, notice it says that year over year change is down from 7.05. So almost a whole percentage point down from it was a year ago. That's a lot of savings right there. All right. Mortgage purchase applications down 14% from a year earlier as of the week ending January 30th. So less buyers are in the market. And then Google searches for homes for sale, highest level since August. So we're seeing a much, much bigger uptick, up about 15% of people searching for homes for sale. So we're seeing a big surge back into the buyer market, and then sellers are increasing. So we got a little bit of a correction going on, right? We talked about the average median sell price in the country sitting at $379,950. It's a year over year change of only 1.2%. That's a healthy inflation, a little bit low actually. So again, I don't see them changing the interest rate because of this. They got to get the buyer pool and more builds on there and more inventory on the market before they start doing too much crazy things with the interest rate. We talked about median monthly. Okay, let's just jump down into some data, okay? Now, those on TikTok, I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to break down this data, but on my screen, on the other channels, is the graphs from Redfin. And and we're gonna do a quick breakdown of this. I think this is very important for us to take our time looking at this, okay? Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit here to get that a little bit closer. Well, it is not wanting me to do it. Wait, there we go. Too close. Gosh, it's split between the two. Technology sometimes. All right, let me just see if I can. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is new listings of homes plus 1% year over year, 4-week rolling average of weekly new listings of homes. So what we're going to see, if we go back to January of 2023, we see it under 50,000, okay? As the year progressed, it goes up in 2023. It keeps going up. By mid-year, June and July, we're sitting at right under 100,000, okay? So this is 2023. We're sitting right around 100,000 homes, okay? Then it starts dipping as the winter months, fall and winter comes along. This is typical cycle. Matter of fact, if you can see my graph, those on TikTok, you would see that the arch that is being portrayed, 23, 24, and 25, starts off slow in the winter, in January, February, March, and begins to build up in the spring, peaks in May, June, and then it starts dipping kind of a little bit in July and goes all the way down in December, right back where it started in January, right? So that's the arch. So when we start talking about buying season, if you're a real estate agent, you know when that is, guys. It's the best months of the year when it's warm, people can get out and see things and all that kind of stuff, right? People are out of school. That's when people mostly move, all that data. This arch follows that. But the thing we want to note is 2023, where that graph is, then we want to notice where the 2024 is. It's slightly above the orange, okay? So every single period in 24 was above 23. So the new listings on the market was above 23 and 24. Then what do we see in 25? We see the exact same thing, except for maybe a couple months here and there, but it spiked way up in the spring of 2025. We started seeing interest rates adjust. We started people feeling more confident getting into the market. And so more sellers began to list their homes in 2025. Again, this is data showing you that lock-in effect is becoming less and less of a factor. More people are beginning to put their house on the market. So this graph tells us a lot. Now, what we can note, and we don't have much data to go on 2025 just yet, or 2026 just yet, but that red bar is 2026. And right now we're at 1.1% year over year increase, okay? So right now we've outpaced, as far as January is concerned, what we did in 2025. So we've already saw just a slight uptick, and it's projected to continuing going above 2025 metrics. So we need to keep this in mind. This is very good data that Redfin has given us as far as a graph. I love a visual. We talk about active listings of homes for sale. We see what that looks like. The orange bar for 2023 is all low compared to 24. 24 spikes up. 2025 goes even higher. We go from 900,000 to over 1 million, right? Way over 1 million early in the year, and then it stays up there for a long period of time. So this is really good data. We talk about months of supply and demand. We look at that graph there. I won't labor this too much. We have 27% of pending sales under contract within 2 weeks. This is where the numbers have switched a little bit, okay? And this is where that market shift is taking place. When we look at this data, we can break this down and say, yeah, we are in a shift, right? Because the amount of pending home sales that went under contract within 2 weeks has flip-flopped a little bit. So if we go back to the 2023 market, that orange line considerably is higher than the other past 2 years. All right. So we see the average days on the market sitting there longer. So sellers began to adjust to that change the past 2 years. In 2024, we see that drop down just a little bit, that reduced down just a little bit. 2025 dropped even lower than that. So we are getting less and less people that are on the lower percentage of pending sales under contract in 2 weeks, right? So we're adjusting to the market. We're getting better at pricing homes. More things are selling. These are all factors. Tomoto Sport, thank you for the rose. I appreciate that greatly. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Homes sold in a median of 64 days. All right. So if we just quickly glance at this, we'll see that the average days on the market was much lower. Selling, the days on the market was much lower in 23. It was close in 2024. It spiked up in 2025, and we're projected to be sitting on the market a lot longer in 2026, unless we get better at pricing homes and talking confidently with our sellers, guys. We got to do that. We got to use the data to our advantage. And these are great graphs to take to your sellers and say, look, which percentage do you want to be in, right? You want to sell your property faster? Then we need to price it according to the market, and that's where we got to be at. And here's what I suggest, right? That's the way this works. 19% of homes sold above final list price. 2023, we had some bidding wars going on. Okay, we still had some bidding wars. They went above listing price, right? Usually when they go above listing price, you've got a bidding war. In 2023, that was up there. In 2024, it begins to drop. 2025, it goes even lower. This all makes sense, right? This is what we see in a shift, not a crash. This is not a crash because look at all the market. It's all much the similar type of arches that we see here. Nothing drastic going on. No signals going off to say, oh no, this is trouble. Just more of an adjustment going on. A little bit of a change here, a little bit of change there, and micro changes and those type of things going on. But this, and just so you guys know, all these articles that I'm covering are inside of the description on YouTube. You can go back here and check these type of things out and click on that, and you can go through and digest all these type of things. All right. And there's tons and tons of data on there. But there's the graph that gives you an idea visually about what is going on in this market, right? So if I was to really kind of summarize this article for you guys, I think there is some buyer fatigue going on, and it's being replaced by what I would call a calculated urgency in certain price brackets. So we talk about the average in the nation around the 389,000 mark. Depending on your market, if you're more rural, it might be closer to 3 or 2, higher, high 2s, could be in a bigger area above 4 to 5, somewhere in there. But what we are seeing is that buyers are being more calculated in the urgency of them buying a home, right? They're not just rushing in and buying. They're beginning to look at the numbers and seeing what it means. And then they're beginning to negotiate. They're not going in and just accepting the seller's list price. The buyers themselves and even most agents are becoming very much aware that a lot of homes are overpriced currently. They've not adjusted to this shift. So one is, if you are a buyer's agent and you focus more on representing buyers, you need to become very much aware about what the value of homes are in your market. Be paying attention about what things are selling for. That way you can better guide your clients. If you're a listing agent, you need to lean in heavily into this data to explain where the market is with your sellers. You need to make sure you are aware of pricing strategies and incentives and what they can be doing to attract the buyers to sell their property. The competition is ramping up a little bit on the seller side of things, and the buyers are more calculated. So when you have this kind of shift going on, properties tend to move a little bit slower. So we need to keep that in mind. It talks about price drops are becoming more common as sellers test the upper limits of the market. So we're going to probably see that trend carry on all the way through 2026. You're going to start seeing more and more price drops happen because homes are sitting on the market longer. If you've been in this industry for any length of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The mood, too, is still cautious but active, okay? There are more buyers that are seeking move-in ready over fixer-uppers as well because they're paying a little bit more of a premium still for these houses. So they don't want to necessarily go in and have fixer-uppers. So if you're a seller or listing agent, encourage your seller to get their home move-in ready. Do the little small repairs and things that present the home in its best light possible. Landscaping, curb appeal, garage doors, front doors, those type of things, right? Paint, freshen them up. We're in. So be sure to pay very much attention to that. What I would say, and this is more or less just a strategy. Here's something I used to do. When I was actively listing and selling property, every single Friday, let me back up. If I would go in and I would list a property, part of my listing presentation would simply be that I would try to bring my assessment about what the home would sell for. I would bring that to the table if I could get a good idea. And most of the time in a shift, the seller would be in a position where like, no, I want to list at this, and that they hold to a certain price. My goal still would be try to be honest with them up front and get it priced where I think it's going to move. But if I would sit down with him and I said, look, you hired me as a professional to sell your home. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I understand you want more money. We all want more money, but we can only sell it for what the market will actually bring. But here's the thing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm willing to work with you a little bit if you work with me. And what I want to do is I want to spend at least 1 to 2 weeks trying out this price. If you want me to try that price, fine. But just understand that I got to spend a lot of marketing dollars to market your home. And I want to make sure we have it in the best way possible to be able to sell it. So if you will, let me list it for a week or two and at your price. And if we don't move it on every Friday, I'm going to give you a price correction strategy that I think is going to move your property. All right. After 2 weeks, if we don't have active buyers or we can't obtain an offer after 2 weeks being on the market, I want you to agree that you're going to come down to this price, right? And I would have this conversation with them. And then every single Friday, I would have a Friday price correction day, right? That would be where I would tell every single listing appointment, every single seller that I will be calling them on Friday. And Friday morning, that would be my sales calls. I would call my listings and talk to them about the price, give them information, update them on what's happened and transpired on their property, and then see if I can get a reduction to move the property if it was sitting on the market. The first 2 weeks is so crucial. And then I would say the next 2 weeks, I'm going to try to price it at that point. My goal would be to try to get it sold in 1 month or under contract, right? Now, obviously we're dealing with people. That's not always the case, but this was my talk track. This is what I tried to do. This is what I tried to hone in on because we want to make sure that we're pricing homes accordingly to fit the market. So consider doing something like that. I'm not saying you have to. Pick a different day. But I do say that you need to be having these conversations and be upfront with sellers or wanting to put their house on the market for more than what it's going to bring. You need to be honest with them. You need to tell them what's going on. But that can only come from an agent that fully understands the market and what's actually happening. If that agent does not understand the market and what's actually going on, for them to be able to give advice, what are they giving other than speculation? There's a lot of data we can lean into. And hopefully this show is helping you do that. That is my goal here. So if you are finding value, consider subscribing, following, and liking, all that kind of stuff. Thank you. All right. Let's see. I'll real quick, I'll move on. I would, there in the links in the description, you can go here and look at this article, and there's all these graphs. Use some of these graphs to talk about the market. If you want to, share this article with some of your sellers, or maybe make it part of your listing presentation, I think that's a good idea. It shows a lot of information inside of this that kind of gives you a good visual picture about what's going on with the market. And you can describe this to the seller. You can sit down with them and show them what's going on. And to be honest, data doesn't lie. It shows you the truth about what's going on in the market. So leverage it. It's right here. Take advantage of what you have at your disposal. All right. Let's see here. I'm just going to break down this article here myself. I'm not going to labor on too much of this. We're going to kind of read through kind of NAR CEO and president talk, housing affordability, renewed member focus at MN conference. I'm just going to talk through this. There's been a lot, and I'm going to pause for just a second. There's been a lot of harshness towards the National Association of Realtors in how they represent and what they do. And some of it has been very warranted. And this is not my soapbox. Let me just say, this is me kind of taking a step back from the industry. And I talked about this. There has been, when you start factoring every single lawsuit that's been levied and how the MLS is working and the control of data and the siloed of associations versus MLSs, there is so much conversation going on right now in regards to the National Association of Realtors and how they are an advocate for realtors. And as a realtor, I understand that frustration. So they have really really taking a step back and looking at and reassessing and coming back with answers to what they're really about, and articulating their value proposition to realtors. And you have to applaud that. Are they going to get everything right? No, they're just people managing a very large association with many different opinions, right? Very difficult to do. But you have to appreciate what Nikia Wright, which is the CEO, is doing with the National Association of Realtors, right? And also the president, Kevin Brown, I think is his name. I think it's Kevin Brown. I think he's the president. Correct me in the comments if that's true. I think it's Kevin Brown. They're doing a good job of addressing the voices of realtors, and they're hearing them out, and they're having a talk track to kind of get back to what it used to be. And I think this is good conversation. We still have a long way to go, but as an association, and I am a member of National Association of Realtors, and I think they do a lot of good. We start talking about the advocacy and what they do for legislations and regulations and things like that. They do some amazing work for homeowners. We're not talking specifically about realtors, but they are advocates for home ownership in America, and they do a lot of good there. I think they've just kind of gotten distracted by technology and this surgence that they had to be the answer to everything, and so they had their fingers in everything, and that came into a dominance and some force and almost like a police force, and it just became oppressive a little bit towards the realtor trying to be creative, and it just got messy. So I will say some of these lawsuits and things have exposed some of this and brought it to light. And again, I want to applaud. Yeah, Nick, it says Kevin Brown, so it is the president. Okay. I want to applaud the work. I do. So let's just go into this. So this is CEO Nikia Wright and 2026 President Kevin Brown covered a lot of ground in each of their 22-minute interviews. We're not going to go through this whole thing. If you're a subscriber to Inman, that's what. No, this. I'm sorry. This is NAR.realtor. But on Inman, you can watch this whole entire interview and watch it for yourself. And I encourage you to do this. Get in here and look what NAR is saying in response to all this pushback by realtors. We got to be aware. All right. It says, with a comprehensive strategic plan. This is a bunch of links in here, guys. Again, this is going to be in the description of the YouTube channel, of the description of this video, this live stream. You can click on this, and I would encourage you to click on this link right here and go to this report, right? And this is their strategic plan. It breaks down what NAR's mission is in 2026 and what they're trying to do. Okay. And I'll tell you what, I might actually go through this on one of the live streams just briefly and touch on it, because I think we need, as realtors, we need to be very much aware and just observe what is going on and what they're really looking to do. So that's where you can find that. So you can find that link on there. It says, and top leadership appearances on just about every stage and platform. People are starting to see a new NAR. They are. It says CEO Nikia Wright and 2026 NAR President Kevin Brown's one-on-one interviews at Inman Connect, New York on Wednesday and Thursday are the latest examples of how NAR is living in its transparency era. All right. Let's jump in. NAR's lane. Okay, and this is a quote, okay, by Nikia Wright, the CEO. It says, quote, NAR's lane is to be the base camp for the industry, and it is to be here for the independent contractors around the country that do not necessarily always have to stay with a particular brokerage. If you leave house one and go to house two, you can come back and get educated, network, all of the things. All right. So they are understanding their position that NAR is meant, the National Association of Realtors is meant as a central base camp hub for real estate agents, irregardless of brokerages that you're in. Okay. So they're taking a step back and saying, look, we're for everybody. We don't care about brokerages. We're talking about agents specifically, that if you're moving to one brokerage or another, they will have the tools and resources you need to still maintain community, networking events, and resources and training. Okay. So again, I would applaud, right? I think that is a good move. That is getting back to what NAR is about. It's about that cohesive group of people that have a common goal to represent clients well, coming together with a protection and, I will say, governance to some degree, association that provides some of those resources, right? She spoke about all three levels of realtor organization, local, state, and national, should support members rather than compete against their business models. Okay. In other words, we really shouldn't be trying to impede and insert ourselves into their business models. We should come alongside and support, right? In both Wright's interviews and Brown's one-on-one with Brad Inman, Inman Group's founder, the question was raised, what is NAR doing to address housing affordability? Okay, so now we get into the housing affordability argument. It says NAR is the only institution, and this is if I was to sit here and say one of the most important things that NAR can continually do, and they have done, is the advocacy side of things for home ownership. Okay, and that's where they're going to lean into this just a little bit. And I think this is a very good move. I think I'm going to sneeze, sorry, live. That'd be good. NAR is the only institution in the country that is holding the line on this conversation. Wright said, when people say, why is this on the president's agenda? It's because we set the table for it to be on the agenda. She added, and to be clear, when I say we, it's the collective we, because this is your dues dollars. All right. This is very good. So, the past few weeks, I have been talking over and over and over again about all the things that Trump's floated out there in his association, right? Or sorry, his administration. They have floated all these ideas. Okay. So what Wright is saying here, again, this is not partisan. This is bipartisan at best. She is saying that what is on the table, all these things that are on the table, is because NAR is pushing that to the administration and talking to both sides of the aisle about housing affordability. It's becoming a topic because of NAR. And I agree. If you go back and you look at RPAC and you research all the news articles and stuff that's going on with RPAC, this is exactly what they're doing. They are addressing and looking at the data and making decisions to help the housing affordability. She is bringing that to the forefront, right? She added, Wright highlighted RPAC's Purple Party doctrine, giving equally to Democrats and Republicans in efforts to elect pro-realtor and pro-homeownership lawmakers. They're focused on one thing. They don't focus on politics and all this type of stuff. They're focused on home ownership. That's it. Laws that help home ownership. That's what they're looking at. All right. Brown touted bills NAR is actively engaged in. Okay. So these are all bills that we have talked about right here on this live stream over the past few weeks. Okay. Listen to what she says. Like the bipartisan More Homes on the Market Act, all right, that would double the capital gains exclusion of a primary residence from $250,000 to $500,000 for a single household and $500,000 to $1 million for a married couple. The exclusion was last revised under the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997. Guys, it hasn't been changed since 1997. So we got advocates that are looking into this and making changes and bringing it to the forefront. Listen, if you guys are taking my sound bites on TikTok and Instagram and everybody else, and you're thinking that I've gotten some DMs talking about me being a Trump supporter and all this kind of stuff, it's crazy. I have not mentioned my political beliefs at all. I have literally delivered facts. And what I'm delivering is all about housing. So it's not about parties. I don't care about the parties when it comes to housing. I don't care. So it's about housing affordability. And what NAR is saying is that they are the ones actively engaged in this legislation, these regulations, and passing these laws so these things happen, right? This is all about housing. It's all about housing. The only reason I'm talking about Trump right now is because he's the president. He's the president. He's the one that is bringing these things up, right? So anyway. All right. That is a 30-year-old law, Brown says. It was never indexed for inflation. And so now we have this conundrum where people are locked into their houses. They have a 2.75 interest rate, and they are also locked in because they either can't afford to pay the tax or don't want to pay the tax. So these are all factors too. Again, lock-in effect, I'm not so concerned about personally. I think that just time's going to heal the wound. I keep saying it. Time is going to heal the wound of the lock-in effect. It will do it. He also mentioned helping to cut regulatory red tape to help increase housing inventory. Both Brown and Wright talked about the association's popular AI-driven no-cost realtor property resource used by roughly 500,000 members to harness data on millions of residential and commercial listings. NAR's investment in the database is just one way it is focusing on members and supporting their day-to-day business, a goal both Wright and Brown stressed. This is Brad Inman noted the arrogance factor of NAR seems to have gone away, to which Brown said there's no room for arrogance. So there's a lot probably to unpack inside of that. And Brad Inman is alluding to a lot of conversations over the past few years when realtors were pushing against NAR and making comments, and were responded with an arrogant type response. And there was like this lack of servant leadership and more of a hierarchy of leadership. NAR became more, can I gain a foothold and get a better position so I can contain and have more control, right? And rule over the realtors. I pray that, right, and it does seem to be the case, that she is taking the servant leadership idea, right? She's saying, we're here to support. So she's going from, I'm in a powerful position that I now have all these realtors. Now, given NAR was kind of forced to do that given all the past history, but they're responding correctly. She's coming down and she's supporting and she's serving the realtors. It's like they have begun to figure out their place. Like they have begun to understand what their role is as realtors and what real estate agents need. And for that, I applaud them. Continue that journey, guys. Continue down the journey of supporting the realtors in your association and realizing that if you serve in any position, any role, any office, inside, local, state, nationally, inside of the National Association of Realtors, don't forget that your ultimate role is servant leadership. It doesn't mean you can't, keep, integrity of data and keep people honest and code of ethics and enforce those type of things. I'm not saying that. I think all those things, again, elevate our professionalism. But when it comes to everything else, don't forget your role. Your role is to support that agent, serve them and lead them well, and they will love you and support you back. And they will champion your cause. They'll rally behind you, and they will do also the right things under the guidance, right? They will respect you enough to understand that you are not trying to lord it over them. You are serving them, and they're more likely to do the things you've asked them to do. So I applaud you. I thank you. I think this is a great step forward, and continue to do so. All right. 2 more articles and we're going to wrap up. Really, the last article is just to highlight this next article is really the final article. This is an article by Yahoo Finance, and it's titled, "Did 70% of real estate agents really sell 0 homes in 2025? Here's what the data actually shows." Now, I will say this is kind of a jarring look at industry statistics regarding kind of like the agent income and retention of agents in the industry. And this headline kind of leans heavily into kind of like an initial grab, like, oh my gosh, is this true? But here's the thing, they actually cleaned it up really nicely, I will say. At the end of this article, they really cleaned it up nicely. But they're not wrong. And I don't know if the 70% number is correct. I don't know. I'll read this a little bit more, but they're not necessarily wrong. The majority of agents don't sell houses. Majority of agents get in this industry because the point of entry is pretty easy, right? The bar is really low. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It just kind of is. Like most states just need a few amount of hours taking a specific course. You go take an exam to pass that course, and you take a licensing exam, and boom, you're in business, and you can go sell houses. And so the point of entry is pretty low. But here's the reality is like the job, for what most people think the job is, and they just think it's kind of easy to come in here and just, go sell houses. I'm going to just go show houses. They don't realize how difficult it actually is to make a living doing real estate and how much sacrifice it actually takes, right? They just watch the HGTVs out there and they just think it's great. So yeah, I'd say the percentage is extremely high that don't actually sell real estate. I would say it's very true. So let's get into this article. Here's the article. It says, viral data circulated online has led many to question the necessity of the real estate profession and the stability of the housing market. The claim, roughly 70% of real estate agents did not sell a single home in 2025. Now, this is by Emma Neff, by Deseret News, syndicated by Yahoo Finance. The origin of the 70% figure. So this is where I don't know. Let's just kind of see what it says here. It says, while resurfacing as data for 2025, the statistic first gained traction in 2024. However, the figure did not originate from the official National Association of Realtors data. Okay, this is noted, okay? Instead, it came from a comment made by a Redfin executive at Inman Connect Trade Conference, according to BAM, a real estate trade media outlet. Okay. So there we go. And again, that's why they're cleaning it up nicely. They have the headline and it grabbed your attention, but they immediately, at the very beginning of this article, they cleaned it up, right? Now, it says that 70% figure includes every active license registered in the multiple listing service. This includes part-time workers, referral-only agents, and administrators who maintain a license but are not actually trying to sell homes. Okay, there's a lot of skewing of data there. I mean, if you talk about like, okay, part-time agents, they will sell some. Most of them will sell one or two. They'll work through their sphere of influence. And then after they kind of dry that up and they don't ever develop the business side of the industry, and that's about all they sell. So that's absolutely one. You also have the referral only agents where they're maybe like in a company that is only does referrals. They can actually physically represent. Some states allow this, some don't, but they just are in what's a referral company only. They can, if someone came up to them and said, I wanted to buy a house, they could refer that to an agent and that agent then goes and sells it. So it's counting that person. And then also, yeah, MLS data and things like that can be very skewed because you have administrative type accounts in there that are licensed agents, but they're not actively listing and selling. So their numbers are always zero. Like in our company, we have, I think we've got like 10 to 12 people that are administrative only, but hold license. So that would skew that number too. So again, we can't go to the number and say 70% and say that's the case. But I will say there is a high percentage of agents that don't sell any properties. That might be where it gets to, right? I'd say it's very, very high. This is in contrast, the National Association of Realtors member profile, which surveys members who pay dues specifically to be active in the business, tells a different story. Oh, okay. According to the 2025 NAR member profile, which shows data for the 2024 calendar year, the median active professional successfully closed 10 deals. Only 5% of agents registered with NAR specializing in residential sales reported 0 transactions. That's good. And this is the differentiation. And that tells you right there the disparaging difference between data. This is why this is just a reminder. If you are watching, listen, you could easily do what just happened at the very, very beginning of this article. Hold on. Sorry, I gotta make TikTok know that I'm still here. There we go. So this is a reminder that we don't just read headlines, we don't just run with it. And even when we are listening to somebody that we consider to be a professional being interviewed by somebody, could mess up, right? They could say the wrong data. You know, he made a statement and it almost got me, right? Almost got me. And like when they make the statement, 70% of real estate agents, right, don't sell 0 homes. They said it from the stage. All right. So, but yet they didn't factor in all the information. This is a very good lesson for us to understand that we don't run with headlines. We read the data, take our time to read and digest. All right. So only 5%. Let's see, where was I? I got all off. Let's see. There it is. All right. The 2025 update. Official National Association of Realtors data regarding real estate agent success rates for the fall of 2025 calendar year have not yet been released. Despite this, the 70% claim has recalculated as a 2025 statistic. While specific agent success rates for 2025 are still in the works, a 2026 Redfin report highlighted several nationwide housing trends for 2025. We talked about Redfin's report. We're not going to talk about that too much. It says if the 70% failure rate were accurate, the median number of closed deals in official reports would be near 0. Instead, the data suggests that while the market is still difficult, full-time professionals are still closing deals. So yeah, like I think the statistic is way lower, right? It's just way lower. See if there's anything else in this article I need to point out. I don't think there is. We talked about all the data and stuff. But there is something I want to hone in on this a little bit. HEP is forecasting a 5% increase in existing home sales in the coming year. That's a little higher than most places I've read, actually. Sorry, I didn't share my screen. That's a lot higher than they're saying HEP is forecasting a 5% increase in existing home sales. Most people are saying 2 to 3, and some reports are saying 5 and 6. Yeah, above 6. Okay, so yeah, so but here's the reason why we wanted to kind of highlight this article, right? Is one is being like we need to make sure we take our time to read articles before we just run with them, and 2, understanding that your consumer is reading this and thinking that 70% of realtors just don't sell anything. And that's not what the data says. It actually says 5% don't sell anything. It's a much lower number. Like that's a crazy low number. So we need to keep that in mind. But now I will say, here's where we gotta put our minds together here is think through this. Is like, what do we need to do to make sure we're not part of the 5% that don't sell anything, right? There are certain practices that we need to do. There's certain business disciplines that we need to do. And one of that is constantly prospecting. If you're an agent out there and you're listening, like, you don't ever stop prospecting. I would schedule every single day, an hour or 2 hours a day for relationship-based prospecting. That's a business discipline you need to develop. That's how you build business, right? And then I'd get really good at buyer consultations and seller, seller listing presentations and talking about the value and talking about what the market is doing. Be professional, being able to articulate your value proposition to the clients you represent, showing them what the data is actually saying so you can help guide a buyer in negotiations correctly based on what the market is and what that home's actually worth. Being aware about what the housing industry is doing and the market is doing so you can guide your sellers and list the property correctly, and maybe offering incentives and things like that to move more property so you don't fall into the longer days on the market type situation we find ourselves in. So these are all things that professional real estate agents are going to be very much aware of, so that way they don't fall into the trap of not being able to represent things well and correctly with the information they're given. So that's how we don't become part of the 5% that don't sell anything. If you want to be part of the 95% that sell something, stay active in your community and aware and prospect and generate leads for yourself, and you develop business disciplines and things like that to keep things going. And then, document, go back and look at your processes and how you got clients and how you cultivated those clients and converted them into closings and then in referral business. And what do those systems look like? Don't overcomplicate what we do. It's all about people. It's all about connecting with the people and getting in front of them. So do that. Get in front of people, right? So get in there and document. We talk about this all the time. I got videos all over my YouTube channel that talks about just different strategy and things you can do. Go check that out. But anyway, that's the end of that article. That's what I want to say. Now I'm going to shift real quick to just one last one. And this is just a really brief one. But I want you to get this in your mind because I talk about this all the time, and I'm just going to stress this. Let me see, which one is it right here? This one right here is all about video as an essential tool. And it's a specific article in regards to Litchfield Park, Arizona. And they're highlighting video as an essential tool for selling homes in today's market. So, and this is specifically in Arizona, and it makes the argument that agents in Arizona are doubling down on video as pretty much a non-negotiable for this year. And they saw the major uptick in 2025 for people using video. And let me just say, this is not a trend, guys. Video is not a trend. It is a fundamental way that buyers and sellers are engaging with you as a realtor. All right. If you use any platform, you look at any platform, they all have a video option in there. And if you just took a moment, and if you're flying anywhere or you're waiting at a mall somewhere or whatever, I want you just to stop and just observe. And what I want you to observe is I want you to look at people sitting down with their phones and what they're doing with them. And I guarantee what you're going to see is they're doing this. And they pause, wait a few seconds, and they do this again. What are they doing? You know what they're doing. They're absorbing short videos. They're absorbing reels and TikToks. Sometimes they'll do this, and then they'll sit. They're not reading. They're watching video. So you got to understand that our mobile devices now are video machines. More content is absorbed through video on our devices than any other way that they do it. They do more video consumption on their devices than anything else. So video is where you double down. This is not a trend. This is where you need to be spending your time, right? So you need to learn how to do video marketing. You need to figure out ways to be in front of people. You need to have a YouTube channel or a TikTok or something like that. You got to be out there doing this. You might hate it. I hate the way I sound. I hate the way I look. I don't like the way it makes me uncomfortable. Yeah, I get it. I understand, but that's what everybody's doing. And that's what the buyer and sellers are expecting. They want to see their agent up there doing those type of things. They do take notice. I will tell you though, offer value. Okay. Video used to be more for just like walkthroughs and things like, hey, look, here's a tour or whatever. Now it's switching to more like neighborhood storytelling, right? It's like I'm going through and telling you about the neighborhood and what's going to be like to live here. And I'm talking to business owners and restaurants. I'm reviewing them, and I'm creating a consumer expectation about my market and what it looks like to live here, right? And the consumer expectation has shifted, right? If there's no video in regards to the listing, it's becoming more and more of a necessity because they're looking for that video. When they're swiping, looking at photos, a lot of them are looking for videos, walkthroughs, tours, drone footage. They're looking for all these action items to get them in front of the house, right? So that's happening. So let me just briefly talk about this. This is the article by Litchfield, Arizona. It says, as the real estate landscape continues to evolve, the Karen team is emphasizing the critical role video content plays in modern property marketing. With buyers increasingly relying on digital platforms to search for homes, video should transition from an optional marketing tool to an essential component of successful real estate strategies. All right. The husband and wife team, who relocated to Arizona from upstate New York in 2011 and became licensed in 2012, brings extensive property management experience to their video marketing approach. Matt Karen, known as a dedicated realtor agent in Litchfield Park, Arizona, notes that effective video content goes beyond simple walkthroughs. Top performing content captures design details, highlights neighborhood lifestyle features, and showcases the unique personality of each property. She's focusing in on the video, describing the property, giving context to the property, helping people visualize what it's like to live there, be a part of that house, and create an emotional experience with the home, right? Not just pictures and just a quick walkthrough, but demonstrating what this property has to offer, right? It says, according to industry insights from leading real estate firms, strategic video use builds trust and credibility with potential clients. Realtors in Litchfield Park, Arizona, who incorporate video into their marketing see measurable growth in engagement and brand recognition. The most successful videos serve specific purposes, demonstrating what makes a property special, identifying the target audience, and evoking emotional connections. It does all those things. It's relatable at this point, right? When you do video, it's relatable. You're connecting with the actual property a little bit more. It's not just a still photo. So anyway, that's that article. I just want you thinking about video, building your confidence up to do it, right? Get out there and make some videos. Don't worry about it being perfect. Be yourself. Make mistakes. Stutter over yourself. I mean, look, on these live streams, I cough, I sneeze. I'm just being human, right? I mess up. I stutter. I don't go back and retake. It's live, right? I'm just naturally doing this. It records it and then it lives on forever up there, right? All of my sneezes and coughs, they live on forever in infamy on the YouTube airwaves, right? So, but again, don't be afraid to get out there and do video. Don't do it. Just go do it. Start recording. Hit that record button and go. And really think about doing like neighborhood spotlights. Maybe 1 or 2 a week. Maybe 1 a month even. Just talking about some specific part about your area. And those videos are what they call evergreen. They live on. They talk about your market, and people would gradually go back and look at those type of things, right? You can do a YouTube channel and post it on there, and people come back and look at it when they do searches, right? I would encourage you this too, is like a lot of your social media accounts and stuff are allowing you to do like video responses in messages now. So like you can, instead of like just making a comment, you can actually push a button and then leave a video. That's a great way to engage more personal. And also even with text messages and things like that, there's different ways to send video now. But why not do that? Why not make yourself more relatable and connect with people like more on a human level than just through text? I will say this too, that'll cut down a lot of the confusion about how texts are perceived and even emails. So I think that would be really, really good. Okay. So just something for you guys to think through as an end to this live stream is like, don't be afraid of doing video. Like get out there and do some video. I think that is absolutely the play for 2026 and going forward. It's not going anywhere. It's just ramping up more. So figure out that strategy, get out there and do it. So anyway, hope you guys found this extremely helpful for you guys. I'll be back tomorrow. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. I will be here where you're watching me now. So come back and check out this. You set a schedule. There's also a bell. You can ring the bell and that'll notify you every time I hit the live button to come back and watch this. I appreciate you guys being here, and comments and things like that is always helpful too. Please be engaging. If there's anything of value, let me know. Also, guys, if and I'm gonna throw this out there, well, let's see. I'll do that tomorrow. I was gonna throw my email into the chat, but I think I got that switched over already. I'm gonna put my email in the chat next, probably in the comment section of this video. If there's an article or there's a topic that you're struggling with or don't fully understand, please let me know. I would love to kind of hash that out for you, talk it over. Doesn't mean I'm going to have all the answers. I will do some research and try to find the answer for you. That's what I do every day. I don't mind doing that. I love doing that. I like research. I like data. I like information. So I like a challenge. So if there is something out there that you guys are dealing with, you need some answers to, questions answered to, please let me know. I would love to do that for you. But anyway, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. That is your real estate brief for today. If you did find this helpful, please consider hitting that like button to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content. If you're watching me on TikTok or Instagram, anywhere else, please follow, like, comment, all that kind of stuff, right? I would hopefully you consider subscribing as well, that you can join this community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is truly relationship focused first. And guys, there are so many articles that I could be going through, and there's so much more that I could be talking about. But man, I have been going on for an hour and I don't know, over an hour and 15 minutes. So for that, it's time for me to go. I will see you guys tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern time, right here where you're watching it now. Take care and have an amazing